Catan is the biggest board game after the mainstream household ones we grew up with, and I'm sure you've all at least heard of it. Personally, I of course knew of Catan, but never got around to actually learning and playing it. So today we were sponsored by Dovetail Games to play Catan on their console edition, which also just got a new game mode DLC called Cities and Knights. Click the link below to check it out. I've spent time playing a bunch and learning things, so I'm now going to share with you 7 big tips and tricks so you don't have to worry about jumping into Catan. First of all, Catan is not actually complicated to learn. It kind of feels like it is if you just heard about it in passing. There's resources and tiles, and there's so many rule variants and game modes and custom game rules that people play with that it all sort of jumbles together and you think that, oh, this is such a complicated game, but actually when you jump in, it's pretty straightforward. Another thing that makes it sound complicated is that there are championships and tournaments. People play this at the pro level, but it's not that everyone plays at the pro level, and a lot of people just play it for fun. Once you jump in, you'll realize it's really easy to learn. It took me about 30 to 40 minutes to pretty much get everything. In digital versions like this console edition you're looking at, you can play in local multiplayer, online, or versus AI. There's also crossplay here, so no worries if your friends or family are on other consoles. That means there's a lot of ways for you to get in, jump in, and just play some games, in single player or multiplayer, however you want. And after a little bit of time, you'll understand all the rules. Now, about luck. So luck plays a big part in pretty much any board game with dice or various other things. Luck plays a part in board games, but there's a surprising amount of strategy in Catan. So of course, when you draw cards or get resources, it's all based on dice rolls. But once you know some things, you start to realize it's less random and more pattern-based. For example, dice chance. You're rolling 2 die in the base game of Catan, and an event die in Cities and Knights, but you're basically rolling a 2d6, right? 2 dice, 6 sides. And there's chances to that. And there's a reason why 7 is a magic number in Catan, because apparently I didn't really do the math before, but ever since playing Catan, I found out the math on 2d6, and 7 is the most common number to be rolled with a 2d6. So 6 and 8 are the next most common. And numbers like 2 and 12 are at the far ends, so they're the least likely to be rolled. Knowing that dice chance, suddenly it realizes, oh, I keep rolling a 7 and triggering the robber. Well, of course, because it's the most common possibility. Also, knowledge and planning does affect a lot of what happens in the game. You know, the robber is activated on a 7, but people choose the target. Resources are drawn based on dice rolls, but people decide what to trade and what to build using strategy and tactics. Knowledge of what can happen in the game can prepare you for what could happen, and you can plan for possibilities, like what cards are available and what the chances of things are. They allow you to prepare and not be surprised when things go down. So Catan is about adjusting your strategy every turn based on a constantly evolving game. Whoever wrangles the dice better comes out on top. In my first game, I had very bad luck, or what I thought was very bad luck. I put myself in a situation that made me more vulnerable to luck. My win depended on not rolling a 7 on one turn, which I later found out. 7 was the most common roll on a 2d6, so my bad luck was actually bad strategy and lack of knowledge. Here's a very important thing to keep in mind. A bad start doesn't mean a bad game. Reversals and upsets can happen, and you can get good luck later. I've been playing many of these games recently, and some games start so badly. I get no resources, I get invaded by the barbarians in Cities and Knights, and I lose my city immediately. I draw no cards, no one wants to trade with me, I don't have anything. But then, after playing for a while into the mid-game and towards the end-game, suddenly I have the most victory points. I've come ahead. Because when it comes to the dice rolls, it does sort of average out. And the more you know about the game, the more you can adjust and strategize and plan for things. So just because you start a game and you're having a bad start doesn't mean it's going to be a bad game. But also it doesn't mean a good start means an easy game. Many of my opponents in these matches, they have amazing starts, they draw tons of resources, they build so many things, they get so many knights down. But then, by the mid-game, suddenly they're getting bad rolls, or they planned badly and they just weren't doing so well later on and I could overtake them. So don't worry if a bad start happens to you. Things can change later on. Earlier I mentioned the different versions and styles of Catan. There's variations on the base game, and DLC like Cities and Knights overhaul the rules of the game to being almost completely different kind of game. So if you get the Catan console edition, you can buy Cities and Knights as a standalone expansion or as part of a season pass. But Cities and Knights is very interesting. There's new refined resources used to upgrade cities, paper, coin, and cloth. So you're not just dealing with the first base resources, there's 3 refined resources. Settlements have a new higher level called Metropolis. There's new development cards that allow you to do completely new things. Knights are no longer just a number that ticks up, they're actually units that you play, activate, and move around. And you can use knights to chase off a robber or defend against barbarian invasions. They can be promoted as well to make them stronger. And one of the biggest things in Cities and Knights is that barbarians are coming to attack the island. And when they do, the island pools all their knights together, and if your knight power is stronger than the barbarians, then whoever contributed the most knight power wins a prize, a victory point, or a development card. Or if your pooled knights are weaker than the attacking barbarians, then the player that contributed the least gets their city attacked and downgraded to a settlement. That happened to me. It's pretty brutal. You can also build walls to defend yourself and increase the max amount of cards you can have in hand, especially good if you want to hoard resources. And also, speaking of versions and styles of Catan, you can by default play on random maps, but there are also set maps with certain themes or even championship maps, which the pros have used in past championships, and you can play on those maps, which can really change how things play out. So yeah, you should be aware that there's many different ways to play Catan, and you can play the one that you feel is most fun. Resources change value throughout the game. Now, not objectively so, but as you play the game, this is something that I feel is quite important. Early game, resources are worth a lot because everyone starts with no resources. So 1 wheat or 1 sheep, that could be worth a lot early game because people just don't have much. Resources get less valuable as everyone gets richer, obviously, through the mid-game, because suddenly people are drawing tons of sheep, tons of wheat. They're swimming in resources sometimes, so offering 1 sheep or 1 wheat in the mid-game doesn't really mean much to anyone. Also, as people get richer, they can do maritime trade, or if they build cities near the docks, then they can get even better rates. So quite often in the mid-game and into the later parts of the game, instead of trading with other players, they'll just do maritime trade because it's just better if they get what they want and no one else gets what they want, right? So resources get very low value in the mid to late game, until you get to the end game where people are about to win. Because then a single resource card can be the difference between winning and losing. In my first game, I was 1 wheat away from winning, and I just couldn't get it, so I lost. So keep that in mind when it comes to trading with other players throughout the game. Resources are worth a lot at the start, less in the middle, and then they become very valuable right at the end. Speaking of winning, don't look like you're going to win. People will focus on you. Getting to 10 victory points wins you the game, but don't be like me in my first game, where I rushed up and landed on 9 victory points. But when I was at 9, even the AI wouldn't trade a single resource to me. Human players would recognize this as well. I needed just 1 wheat to win, and there was just no way for me to get that, and everyone kept targeting me with the robber, and they built things to block my progress. Because it was so obvious that I was about to win, suddenly everyone was against me. And whether you're versus the AI, your family or friends, or on online multiplayer, getting to 9 victory points, everyone suddenly recognizes you're the biggest threat, and they all try and stop you. So just a big tip here, if you're gonna win, try and sneak your way into a win. Get to like 7 victory points and it's like, oh, I'm a little bit away, so don't worry about me. And then you get 3 victory points right in one turn, and that's when you win, because then no one can stop you. So unless you can secure victory, don't hang around just before winning. And overall, learn how you want with Catan. There's a lot of ways. In this console edition, there's video tutorials, interactive guides, the almanac encyclopedia thing, or you can just jump in versus the AI and see what happens. How the game works is pretty straightforward. It just takes a bit of time to learn what is possible. But the rules and how Catan plays as a game, half an hour and you've pretty much got it. Besides that, it's about learning the chances of dice rolls, the knowledge of what cards are available, how many night cards are in a deck, it's like those sorts of things you will learn over time. But actually getting in and playing Catan, very easy, and there's a lot of ways to learn. The video tutorials are right in there if you like watching videos instead, they're pretty quick. But the interactive guides also are it really just demonstrates and shows you how things work, so it's really good. Besides that, open up the almanac, read what the cards do. It's all about learning the best way for you, and everyone learns a little bit differently, so the nice thing about Catan Console Edition is that it's all built in. Learn however you like. Alright, there's the magic number 7 of tips and tricks for you to get started in Catan. Remember to click the link below to check out Catan along with the new Cities and Nights DLC. I hope you found this interesting and useful, but for the Master Catanians watching, what tip do you think is most important? Share your knowledge because it's gonna help someone. If you want to see my very first game of Catan, and for a full gameplay demonstration, check out the video linked on screen or down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.